Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about how to set up a conjugate program, just to understand how it's outlined. And I'm not saying there aren't variations of this. This is conjugate in its, purest sense, essentially what it is. And without going into any of the theory behind how any of it works, I'm just going to explain to you guys how these things work. It is a concurrent periodization model, which means it really isn't periodized because you're training multiple modalities at the same time. People need to also understand conditioning work, general physical preparedness are permissible pretty much any day of the week if you want on conjugate, although it's generally recommended, if you're going to do conditioning on lower days, you want to do your GPP after your leg work. But more or less, it's a 4-day-a-week system. Okay, you train 4 days a week on an upper-lower split. All right, very straightforward. Although we would classify those more as 2 bench press days and 2 squat and deadlift days. All right, so what do we do with those? We have 2 upper, 2 lower days. Each one of those is broken up into a max effort or a dynamic effort day. What does that mean? It means on max effort day, we take the main lift of the day. We train up to a training max or a 1 rep max. That's what we do first in the workout. On the dynamic effort days, we do speed work, usually box squats, speed pulls, can be conventional sumo, whatever variations you want, using whatever barbells you want. All right? For speed, dynamic effort, we do very relatively light weights as explosively as possible for a lot of sets and very short breaks. So it might be 8 sets of 2 or 9 sets of 3 reps with 30 or 60 seconds between, done as explosively as possible. On each of these days, we follow up with upper or lower body supplemental work. So that's pretty much what it is. You have a max effort upper, a max effort lower, a dynamic effort upper, and a dynamic effort lower. All right, that is essentially how things are broken down. All right, as far as how this goes, what do we mean for a max effort bench press day? Well, it means you come in and you take some variation of the bench press. Okay, it could be, your classic bench with a pause. It could be changing different grips. You could do closed grip benching. You could do a bench even wider than you do in competition, right? You could have 4 or 5 different grips you do. Each one of those counts as a separate max effort lift, okay? You track these lifts separately over time so you have individual maxes. It could be a decline bench, an incline bench, a floor press, a pin press, presses against different band or chain weights. Okay, you see where we're going? Presses with specialty bars. So, if you have bands, chains, 3 different bars, my God, you could come up with 40 or 50 different presses that you could max on easily. Easily. I tend to push people in the direction of more raw movements with less bands and chains on these if they're going to be a raw lifter for the max work. Unless you have them and you don't have a lot of other variations, in which case some light bands or light chains work. We don't go as heavy on bands or chains, though, on these as we do on speed work. Speed work, we're often doing 25% of our max in bands or chains. So if your max is 400 pounds, you're going to run like 100 pounds of bands or chains. So that aside, it's what we do. We do a max, and then we do upper body and bench accessory movements for hypertrophy. It's just to get as big and as thick as you can. Preferably picking exercises that are easy to recover from, easy on your joints, because we're already doing heavy benching. Day 2, usually going to be your max effort lower. It means you take some variation of a lower body max lift. What could that be? It could be a squat of any type. Okay, it could be your high bar squat, your low bar squat. It could be wide stance. It could be a shoulder width stance. Those are all variations. It could be a front squat. You could do any of those on a box, right? You could do them to pins. Go to pins and then drive up. You can do them with specialty bars, right? I have 3 or 4 different bars easily that I can squat with. You do any of those. You can add bands. You could add chains. We're taking some sort of lower body lift to a max. Okay, that's if you choose to do a squat. Or you'll usually alternate it oftentimes with a deadlift. You know, it could be any deadlift you want, conventional. You could do sumo deadlifts. You can do bands, you can do chains, you can do block pulls, you can do rack pulls, you can do deficits, you can do pause deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts. You could rotate bars. Right, if you have an axle bar, you could do axle bar deadlifts. You could even do those with straps just to make it a different lift. If you have a deadlift bar, you could deadlift with a deadlift bar for any of those. You could deadlift with a power bar for any of those. Those are different movements if you do. That way you're changing the movement up every week. Okay. Alternatively, you can do a good morning. Doesn't have to be squat or a deadlift. You can max on good mornings. You guys have seen me do like 550 on a good morning before. I have clients who have 500 plus good mornings I've put up in the past. Okay. It's the guy at Westside who did an 800-pound good morning on camera. Burley Hawk, I saw him do 800 pounds. Max effort lift. Yeah, you can do good morning. Then you do hypertrophy work. All right, dynamic efforts. You do speed bench. Usually it's standard for Conjugate to rotate grips on speed bench, but you don't have to. It works for getting some variation in, right? Works for having different strength curves. And that way you train with all the grip widths in one day every week. So you speed bench, then you do hypertrophy work. Dynamic day. And again, preferably that's against bands or chains on the speed work. And if you use bands and chains, if you have excess, you want to run a lot of band and chain. Like I said, 25% of your max is normal. It's common. Sometimes they run over 30%. Some lifters do. So do that for speed. You usually will do a squat and a deadlift on that day though. You know, so it could be box squats with a safety bar followed by sumo deadlifts, both against heavy bands, right? Again, something like 8 sets of 2, 6 sets of 2. You're going to have to use some charts and stuff to figure out your total workloads. All right, that's how your dynamic days go. All right, what do we mean for accessory work? Well, what you would think of is hypertrophy training is done afterwards on all 4 days. All 4 days, you're going to do hypertrophy work. Usually on the upper body days, though, even though sure, you could do a lot of chest work. If your pecs are lagging, you could do a lot of bench variations, floor pressing, dumbbell presses, right? You could do all that stuff. You could even do flies if pecs are really a weak link for you. But it tends to focus more around upper back, triceps, things like that. So what do we mean? A lot of delt work, rowing, pull-ups, a lot of triceps, different extensions, J-arm presses, band press downs. Usually a lot of tricep work is done on this system, right? But again, it can depend upon where your weak links are, right? You customize it to your weak links. Upper back stuff. Things like middle and upper back are permissible on any day of the week, even though that's why instead of it being a true upper-lower, you would really think of it as a bench and then a squat and a deadlift day. And the reason for that, because you can do pull-ups, rows, stuff like that on all 4 of the days if you want, if you have the volume to recover from it, right? It's permissible. It's fine. Just flow with it. In fact, you can never have an upper back that is too big. If you need additional grip work, you'll usually do it on the squat and deadlift days. The squat and deadlift days, what do you do? Well, if you really need the quad work, sled work, you know, leg presses, single leg exercises, hack squats, belt squats. I love the belt squat. I own one. Coming up here next. Reverse hypers, glute ham raises. You want to do lots of posterior chain work. Good mornings. Good mornings tend to be a staple in this system, both for max work and rep work. Don't do speed work with it, by the way. I had a client ask that once. So that's what your lower body days look like. You're going to want to do that sort of stuff. Again, base it upon your weak links. If in doubt, do more posterior chain and reverse hypers, assuming you have access. Okay, but the thing is, it's a system of, it's an upper-lower type system to where we have max work for 2 days, we have dynamic work for 2 days, and then all 4 days you do hypertrophy. And the assumption is also on this system that you're going to be in shape, so you'll do conditioning and GPP, oftentimes on off days or post-workout, plyometrics, box work, box jumps, med ball throws. But for GPP, what do we mean for conditioning? Sled drags, prowler pushes, tire flips, kettlebell swings, weighted carries of any type. General physical preparedness. Okay, you want to do battle ropes And kettlebell swings do that. You want to drag a sled, do that. Change it up. Just get into shape. All right, this system works very, very well for people who have large amounts of conditioning. But that's essentially how you set the system up. That's how you set up the templates. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.